Boker Tov. Today's daf is Kuf Dalid, and we'll begin with Ube Pumbedisa. Pumbedisa is 5 lines down from the top of the Amud, and recently we studied the memor of Shmuel. Shmuel says that in Havdalah, we need to end Havdalah before the Chasima with Bein Yom HaShvi L'Sheshis Yimei HaMaaseh. And the reason for that is because we need what's called Me'ein HaChasima. So the Chasima is Hamavda Ben Kodesh L'Chol. And right before we get to the Chasima, we speak about Yom HaShvi L'Sheshis Yimei HaMaaseh. However, the Pumbedisoi Amri, they had a different shita, and that's Me'ein Pisi Chasam. Somach L'Chasimos. And that before we get to the Chasima, we should reiterate what came at the beginning of the bracha, and not what came at the end of the bracha in the Chasima. In other words, according to Shmuel, it's Me'ein HaChasima. That's how we have to close the body of the bracha. According to Pumbedisa, we close the body of the bracha by going back retroactively to the beginning of the bracha, and we give something Me'ein HaPsicha. So we have Me'ein HaChasima or Me'ein HaPsicha. My Benayu. The Gemara asks the following question. There doesn't seem to be any difference between Shmuel and the Bnei Pumbedisa, because Me'ein HaPsicha is the same as Me'ein HaChasima. They're both the same. We start with either Me'ein HaChasima. Well, let me clarify that. The Chasima is Hamavdil Ben Kodesh L'Chol. And now, what you're going to need is Me'ein HaPsicha, according to Bnei Pumbedisa, or Me'ein HaChasima, according to Shmuel. But in both cases, it's identical, because since the Chasima is Hamavdil Ben Kodesh L'Chol, then you're going to need to end with, according to Shmuel, Me'ein HaChasima, which is Ben Yom HaShvi L'Sheish Yimei HaMaaseh. Whereas according to the Bnei Pumbedisa, you need Me'ein HaPsicha, but Me'ein HaPsicha is also Hamavdil Ben Kodesh L'Chol, because that's how we open the bracha. And that's true for almost all brachas, that the Psicha and the Chasima is one and the same, so that whether you're going back to Me'ein HaPsicha or going back to Me'ein HaChasima, it's irrelevant, because the Psicha and the Chasima are really one theme. So the Gemara says, the only difference between Shmuel and the Bnei Pumbedisa is Yontif Shechalios Achar Shabbos. When Yontif is Chal on Motzei Shabbos, there the Psicha of the bracha is Hamavdil Ben Kodesh L'Chol. And that is similar to every single Motzei Shabbos. But the Chasima of the bracha is totally different. The Chasmimin, our Chasim is being Kodesh L'Kodesh, because we're going from Shabbos to Yontif. So therefore, Laman Yom, according to the Bnei Pumbedisa, Me'ein Psichasam Samach L'Chasimasam, that before we end the bracha, we go back to the beginning of the bracha, is Lo Boy L'Meimar. There's no need to add before the Chasima bein Kedusha Shabbos L'Kedushas Yom Tov Hivdalta. All you have to mention is Havdalah Ben Yom HaShvi L'Sheshis Yimei HaMaaseh, like every single Motzei Shabbos, because that's already Me'ein HaPsicha, because we open up the Havdalah with the words Hamavdil Ben Shabbos L'Chol, correct? Right? What's the psicha of the bracha of Havdalah? Baruch atah Hashem Hamavdil Ben Kodesh L'Chol. So therefore, if you're going to have Me'ein HaPsicha before the Chasima, then you fulfill that requirement by saying B'Yom HaShvi L'Sheish Yimei HaMaaseh, like we do in every Havdalah Motzei Shabbos. So the Havdalah Motzei Shabbos opens up with Hamavdil Ben Kodesh L'Chol, goes on to various different Havdalahs, And then we can complete the bracha according to the Bnei Pumbedisoi by saying B'yom HaShvi L'Sheish Masa, which is identical to Amav Ben Kodesh L'Chol, whereas according to Shmuel, L'man Yom Me'ein Chasimosam Samoch L'Chasimosam, that now at the end of the body of the bracha, we have to mention something that thematically is similar to the Chasima, and the Chasima is Ben Kodesh LeKodesh. Therefore, we have to end the Kiddush, the body of the Kiddush, with the words Ben Kedusha Shabbos LeKedusha Yontav V'Vdalta, which are Me'en HaChasima, because the Chasima is Hamavda Ben Kodesh LeKodesh. Ufa, the Gemara now goes back to Rav Oshia. Rav Oshia was quoted earlier. Om Rabbi Elazar, Om Rav Oshia, Poches lo Yivchos Mishalosh, V'Amosif lo Yosef al Sheva. We need a minimum of 3 Havdalos and a maximum of 7. Meisvei, the Gemara raises the following objection from a Brisa. Omer, a person should recite Havdalos Motzoi Shabbos, Motzoi Yom Tovim, Uvmotzoi Yom HaKippurim, Motzoi Shabbos Liyontiv, Motzoi Yontiv L'chol Shel Moed, Avalo B'Motzoi Yontiv L'Shabbos. That when we go out of Yontiv, let's say Yontiv is on a Thursday night, Friday, then we will not recite Havdalah because we're going right into Shabbos. And now the Brisa will go into detail about how many different Havdalahs we should recite in Havdalah. Haragil, meaning if someone is an expert and he knows how to recite many Havdalahs, Omer Harb, he should recite many Havdalahs. But She'eno Ragil, if he's not an expert in Havdalahs, because again, they didn't have a printed siddur in those days, is Omer Achas. All he needs is one single Havdalah. Whereas Rabbi Oshia had said that the minimum amount of Havdalah is Shalosh Havdalahs. Nothing less will do. The Gemara answers Tanoihi. This issue about whether you need a minimum of 3 or 1 Havdalah sufficient is a machlokas Tanoi. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Now, Rabbi Yochanan refers to a certain Tana. We'll see exactly what his name is, but he uses an acronym, and he's called Benon Shel Kedoshim, the son of the holy ones. Okay, that's a reference to one particular Tana, and we'll get him by name in just a minute. Omer, what did he say? Achas, all you need is 1 Havdalah, 1 single Havdalah. However, other Tanoim disagree, and they require more Havdalahs. And Nagu Ha'am Lomer Shalosh. We didn't accept the opinion of Benon Shel Kedoshim, but rather we require, and that's the accepted custom, 3 Havdalahs, which reflects the Shita Ra'ochia, that the minimum number of Havdalahs is 3. Umay Ninu Benon Shel Kedoshim. Who is this Tana who says that 1 Havdalah is sufficient? You call him Benon Shel Kedoshim. Rabbi Menachem Bar Simoy. B'amay Korile Benon Shel Kedoshim. Below Istakel B'tzursa D'Zuzah. In other words, this Rabbi Menachem, in his life, in his behavior, manifested a higher level of sanctity. He didn't want to look at the minted coins and the tzura, that was the image that was minted on the coins. So Tosfos in Masechet Avodah Zarah asks the following question. You know what was minted on the coins? There were tzuros of Avodah Zarah. And in a pagan society, the way they minted their coins was that on the coins themselves, there were tzuros chakukos. And Tosfos says, the pasuk in Kedoshim says, Al tifnu el ha'ililim. We're not allowed to concentrate and gaze at getchkes, at idols. And this is an idol, because their coins, later on in history, in the Western culture, they put the imprint of the king, the queen, and so forth and so on. But back then, it was a paganistic society, they put the imprint of their gods. Those were the tzuros chakukas of Avodah Zarah. And Tosfos says that's a lav dorais lo tifnu el lilin. Why do we have to project the great extra super sanctity of the Chasidus of Benon Shal Kedoshim of this Rabbi Menachem Bar Simoy by telling that he didn't look? No one's allowed to. Tosfos answers in Masechet Avodah Zarah that if there's a tzura, which generally speaking you don't see unless you are accustomed, chas v'shalom, to visit their temples, these paganistic idol worship temples, then there's an isa to look at them. Aval tzura shal matbeah, when there's a tzura that's imprinted on the matbeah, you don't even pay any attention. You see it a million times a day. On a regular also, and in such a case, Tosfos Machadish mutal l'tztakel. And Rabbi Nachman Bar Simoy, because of his chasidus, was machmer al atzmo shelo l'tztakel. So in any event, this is a special level of chasidus, of piety that goes beyond the letter of the law, that he didn't want to look at those tzuros. It was like a ruach tumah on these coins, on these tzuros. And even if they were created for beauty or as a matter of kavod, but nevertheless, he didn't want to have anything to do with it. This was a special level of harchaka from any ruach tumah of Avodah Zarah. I was once walking with Rav Moshe Shapiro, Zichron Levrach, who passed away not long ago. On a Friday night, we were in Stamford, Connecticut, and it was during this period, the winter period of time. And if you know anything about America, you'll know that at this period of time, December, January, their lights and Christmas lights, and Santa, we passed, I remember one particular house, it had in front of it like an acre's worth of these Christian symbols. So I asked Moshe, they're very beautiful and they were lit up different colors. Are you allowed to look at that? You're not allowed to get benefit from Avodah Zarah. This is called Avodah Zarah. So he was vacillating back and forth. He didn't really come to any conclusion. He wasn't sure whether it was us or not. But I would say that this is probably similar to this case of matbeos, tzuros hamatbeos. On the one hand, we're so used to it. I mean, you walk down any street in America during these months, that's all you'll see is all these idols, these images, with the reindeer and the whole, you know what I'm talking about. But to say technically that it's mutter, I don't know, it's the ruach, there's a ruach tumah there. You don't want to really get too involved in looking at their images. Sholach lehu Rav Shmuel bar Idi. So Rav Shmuel sent the following recorded message. He said, Chananya achi omer achas. We have another opinion that all you need is one havdalah, and that's what we saw in Rabbi Nachman Bar Simoy. But v'les hilchos chavosei. We don't pass like that. We require a minimum of 3 havdolahs. Rabbi Yitro ben Levi, hamavdil tochi yomer mi ein havdolahs hamuritz b'Torah. Within the list of candidate havdolahs, we have to maintain a certain condition, restriction, that it's got to be havdalah that's mentioned in the Torah. And now we're going to see a case of a havdalah that was included, at least according to some, in the nusach havdalah, and it's not in the Torah. Meisvei, we have a brisa that gives us the Seder Havdolahs, and the number here is critical. It's 7. Because this Seder Havdolahs that we're going to see in this brisa is the ceiling. They want to get the maximum number of Havdolahs to enhance our Havdalah. If you've ever seen a Sephardic Havdalah amongst the Sephardim, it's very common that they, again, before the bracha, they add all sorts of prayers. It's very exciting to see. Anyway, Heich Omer, what should he recite in the Havdalah? Number 1. Hamavdu ben kodesh l'chol, ben or l'choshech, ben Yisrael amim, Ben Yom HaShvi l'Sheish Yemei HaMasa, Ben Tomei l'Tohar, Ben Yom l'Charova, Ben Mayim Elyonim l'Mayim Tachtonim, Ben Kohanim Leviim v'Yisrael. All told 7. I counted them. V'chosem b'seder breishis. Baruch atah Hashem, soder ha-breishis. Soder breishis. Now, why do we end the bracha of Havdalah, Motzi Shabbos, with soder ha-breishis? You organize the creation. And the answer is because on Motzi Shabbos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu began the creation. So it's the first day of the 7 days of the week, the first day of creation was Yom Rishon, which begins at night, which is what we call Motzi Shabbos. Again, then it wasn't exactly Motzi Shabbos because the first Shabbos was a week later. But in any event, the Motzi Shabbos period of time represents the beginning of creation. Acherim Omrim, there's another nusach of another group of the Chasima, and it's Yoter Breishis. Now, what's the advantage of Yoter Breishis? Chazal tell us that the entire Bria was created on that first day. And the differentiation to be kovea everything in its place, that took place every single day of creation as recorded at the beginning of Genesis. But everything in potential was created on the first day. Therefore, the Acherim would want to thank Hashem for Yotzer Breishis, meaning not for organizing the creation, but creating the entire world in potential inherent in that original Breishis. Yosef Rabbi Yehuda Omer Chosem Baruch Atah Hashem Kadesh Yisrael. And that means that although we want to thank God and commemorate the creation of the world was for the purpose of Klal Yisrael. And when you're talking about Kedusha, Lo Kidesh Habore Ela Es Yisrael. That's the unique Kedusha. So the Gemara asks the following question on Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, V'im Isa, if you're right, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, that we don't include in Havdalah that which is not in the Bible, is what are we going to do with the case of Bein Hayom L'Charava, that you have differentiated between the oceans and the dry areas, Lo Ksiva Be'Havdalah. We know the Torah talks about Yabasha, and the Torah talks about Yam, but the Torah never uses a term of Havdalah. So the Gemara answers, Sami Mikan Bein Hayom L'Charava. You have to take that out. Nui Hachi. If that be the case, then you now have dropped down the number, reduced it from 7 to 6. Bein Yom HaShvi L'Sheshis Me'amasa Nami, and Bein Yom HaShvi L'Sheshis Me'amasa should also be excluded from the minyan, from the 7. Why? Because Me'ein Chasimahu. It's a repetition of the Chasima that you have separated from Kodesh L'Chol, Ben Yom HaShvi L'Sheshis Me'amasa, so that can't be counted. And Batzar L'Cha Chada V'Leka Sheva. And now you have less than 7. So actually, when we counted the number, we could have actually counted 8. The only thing is, the last one of Bein Yom HaShvi L'Sheshis Me'amasa was actually left out of the Brisa because it's understood it is a repetition of the main Chasim or the main Psicha. And what you're left with is 7. But if you remove Bein Hayom Ve'Yabasha, Charava, is then you're down to 6. Amri, the Gemara answers, Bein Kohanim Leviim L'Yisraelim, we count it as 1, but really it's 2. Why? Because included in this Havdalah is number 1, Bein Leviim L'Yisraelim, and also Bein Leviim L'Kohanim. And each one of those 2 Havdalahs has a separate pasuk in the Torah. Bein Leviim L'Yisraelim D'chsiv Ba'es Hahi Hivdil Hashem Es Shevet Levi. And that pasuk in Dvarim Perek Yud indicates Havdalah. I mean, it says Havdalah between Leviim and Yisraelim. And we have another Avdol, another pasuk, Ben Kohanim Levim. And where is that? T'chsiv, it's a pasuk in Divrei Yomi. B'nei Amram Aaron u'Moshe vayibadel Aaron lakdisho kodesh kadosh. And Aaron was separated as the father of priesthood of Kahuna, and that's kodesh kadosh. But you see the word Avdollah to separate Kohanim and Levim. So we have Avdollah to separate Levim from Klal Yisrael and to separate Kohanim and Levim into two separate. So we maintain the magic number 7. The Gemara now quotes a machlokes amoraim. How should we chosem halach l'maisa the bracha of Avdol? Michtam mai chos. What should be the chasima of the bracha of Avdol? And here we have machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. Rav Omar, we should say bracha to Hashem mekadesh Yisrael, and that reflects the sheet that we saw earlier of Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda. Shmuel Omar hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol, and that's the nusach that we're familiar with. Hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol. In other words, Shmuel does not actually accept any of the Tanoim in that brayso. So we had Soder Brachis, Yotzer Brachis, and then we had Mekadesh Yisrael, which was the precursor of Rav Shita here. Shmuel has his own opinion of Hamavdil Ben Kodesh L'chol. And it's quite possible that Shmuel derived this from the case of Motzi Shabbos, going into Yontif, where we make the Chasim is Hamavdil Ben Kodesh L'Kodesh. So he figured, well, that's because we're going into Yontif, but if we're going into a regular weekday, then it's Hamavdil Ben Kodesh L'chol. Layet Olav Abaye, V'tem Rav Yosef Ahod Rav. Rav's minhag of Mekadesh Yisrael was objectionable to Abaye to such an extent that Abaye put like a whammy, a curse on anyone who would follow that sheet of Rav. Now, why was Rav so upset and so, why did he object so profoundly to Mekadesh Yisrael? And this is a study of the Achronim. I'm going to just give you the gist of what they say. The Notrim, the Christians, the early Christians, when they got to Sunday and they sanctified Sunday as the first day, then if on Motzi Shabbos we're going to close the Havdalah with Mekadesh Yisrael, it sounds like we're sanctifying Israel for the sake of this day that we're about to begin, right? Motzi Shabbos is the kickoff of the new week. And the Christians felt that on the kickoff, the beginning of the new week, that Sunday is to be sanctified as their holy day. If you're going to say Mekadesh Yisrael, Abai thinks it smacks of a Christian idea that now, as we begin the new week, God sanctified Israel so that we can now, Chas v'shalom, sanctify the new week on that Motzi Shabbos, on that Sunday. Tona Mishmei de Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, Kol Achose Mekadesh Yisrael, V'hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol, Ma'arichan lo Yomav Ushnosov. So this Bryce, in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, wanted to add and integrate to get the maximum bracha, to have both Rav and Shmuel. Rav said Mekadesh Yisrael, and Shmuel had a Mavdil ben Kodesh L'chol. Let's do both. And it's not a hefsek because both integrate into one thematic concept that God sanctified Israel, and in turn, we will go ahead and make Havdalah. We are given that ability to be Mavdil, to separate ben Kodesh L'chol.